Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it's your friend Debbie Potts, the host of the Whole Athlete Podcast. Today I am talking about the female athlete and being low carb, keto, doing endurance athletes, doing fasted workouts. What does it mean for your performance and longevity? We are reading all sorts of information out there on blogs and listening to podcasts and reading books. And it always is an answer for everything. It depends. As I keep saying every show, we're all individuals. You can't compare yourself to somebody else because they're not your identical twin. And even identical twins probably have differences. So this is part one to a 3-part series of looking at the female athlete. So if you're not a female, I think you should still listen to this because I think you'll find it interesting. Because you may have training partners that are females. You may be married to a female, and you need to understand how our training, our fueling, training, and performing should vary slightly depending on the time of the month. And then also if you're perimenopausal and postmenopausal, how our fueling and training should possibly be changed. So this is all information in Dr. Stacy Sims' book, Roar, that I finally read the last month and put together. Well, I have like every page is tagged pretty much, and then I went through and highlighted information. And then I took that information and wrote it in a little notebook. Then I had to go and handwrite those notes into a Word document. And then I only got to page 8 and I got sick of doing it. So I'm going to read over my notes. So you may hear some noise of flipping the pages. And as we talk about flipping the switch to be a fat burner as a fat adapted athlete, the low carb athlete, well, there's certain things that are going to be variables that will depend on your menstrual cycle, your hormones, as well as everything else I talk about every time I record a solo podcast. Bioindividuality, your genetics, your gut biome, your blood sugar regulation, your HPA axis, your mitochondria dysfunction. All these different factors that we look at as I do as an FDN practitioner and a nutritional therapy practitioner and Keon coach. We look at the unique individual when we're coaching them. And I'm not writing necessarily people's triathlon workouts. I'm looking at the other parts. How's your nutrition? Are you dialing it in based on your food sensitivity, your metabolic type, your genetics? And then we look at your exercise. Are you recovering? Are you overtraining? Which most people do. Are you under recovering? Are you getting movement, mobility throughout the day, or are you sitting the rest of the day after you do your workout? So that's not all. We need to look at, of course, sleep, because that's when you recover and repair, when your body detoxifies. We need to look at your stressors is the big major part. As a health detective coach, we're looking and investigating the whole you from the inside out with our hidden internal stressors that we do with functional lab testing to see are you fit and healthy on the inside and out. And you don't know what's under the hood unless you do some labs. And then we got to look at your external stressors, which a lot of people don't realize they even have, which is overtraining, under recovering, environmental toxins, the emotional toxins, and financial stressors and all that other normal stuff. But there's a lot of external stressors that we may not know about. And I've learned a lot about myself since my journey began with my chronic stress disease in 2013. And little things I've learned about myself, like I don't like being late. I get stressed out if I'm late. So I also used to like to keep very busy and I packed my day a little too full. Well, that's a stress because it's hard to be on time for everything if you don't leave enough time in between your appointments or activities you're doing. So it's this continuous circle of day-to-day stress from living life as a race. But today I'm going to talk about some of my notes from Dr. Stacy Sims, some takeaways from her book. And then Dina Griffin, we did a podcast on more the fueling side of your hormone phase and postmenopausal woman. And then I'll talk to Erin Carson from Rally Sport, and she's a strength director, strength trainer, movement coach for a lot of the professional athletes, and you can find her under EC Fit, Erin Carson, EC Fit. And of course, they're both in the Boulder area, but they've never even met each other. Anyway, so it's really fun to dive into these topics because they're unknown. We don't often talk about how to fuel, train, and perform for the athlete. The fat-adapted athlete is obviously what we've been talking about, and then talk about the low-carb athlete to the female athlete, and to the female athlete in hormonal cycle, and then perimenopausal and menopausal cycle. So there's a lot to look at. If you really want to dial in your training, as Dr. Stacy Sims says in the cover of her book, the subtitle is How to Match Your Food and Your Fitness to Your Female Physiology for Optimum Performance, Great Health, and a Strong, Lean Body for Life. Now, her book's a few years old now, so I'm curious if something she's changed her opinion on. But there's a lot of things that we just don't know because everyone's different. And we talk a lot about fasting, intermittent fasting, fasted workouts, being low carb. But then we start to demonize carbohydrates and think that we're better off not eating anything. And doing fasted workouts, we give ourselves a pat on the back because we could do a 2-3 hour run or a 5-hour bike ride without consuming any nutrition. But how do we know when we're doing our body more harm than good? How do you know that those fasted workouts are not optimal for your performance? How do you know if you're damaging your cells or creating more internal stress because you're doing too much stressors? You have too much stress in your life already. Chronic stress, no matter where it's coming from, external or internal, accumulates. And as I say, your beaker of stress gets overloaded. So if you're doing too much of anything, it becomes a stressor, and too much stress will cause what we say in FDN, Reed Davis founder terms it, metabolic chaos. So if you are living life as a race, too much activity during the day, maybe way too much exercise, way too much long distance training, even low heart rate, can be catabolic, break you down as it increases your cortisol level. And often chronic exercise starts to decrease our hormones. So your DHEA is more that building hormone, anabolic, catabolic is breaking down, which is your cortisol hormone. So once we get these hormones out of balance, see, everything in your body, all systems have this homeostasis, that Goldilocks effect, not too much, not too little, that right amount to create optimal health at a cellular level. And so if we're doing too much of anything, it becomes a chronic stress. So that gets to be that hormesis, that hormetic stressor. If that stress is on and off, short duration, just the right amount, not too much that's stressful, and causes your body to go into emergency mode, it's okay. It's a good positive stress. And you adapt to it and get stronger. But what if you're doing it too frequently? So that goes to too low of carbohydrate, too low of fuel during exercise, too much exercise, as I said, but also doing too many of those other biohacks we talk about, the infrared sauna, cold thermogenesis. What is a fine line? And there isn't going to be any, I think, answer, magic number, because it's so individual. So I think more of us, I'm always doing this myself, need to pay attention and learn about what your red flags are, what signals your body's saying to you that was too much for you. So when you have a workout that you are celebrating because you fasted for 2-3 hours and didn't eat anything, maybe just had water, but if you feel lethargic the rest of the day and take 3 days to recover, or maybe you have other symptoms that you just need to sleep all day, and your heart rate variability measurement is in the tank, that's maybe saying you did too much and you didn't recover in between workouts, and there's all sorts of other reasons. But I read an article by Dr. Ali Miller that was interesting about if you do too low of carb, too much intermittent fasting, too much keto for you as a female, but also no one's saying if you're a female endurance athlete. So female is one category, but then there's a female athlete. And if you're a competitive endurance athlete, that's even different than just being female. And if we're having a lot of chronic stress already before you start doing low carb diet, keto type of diet, having those 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, but you already have HPA axis dysregulation, exhaustion, chronic fatigue, which is going to be related to mitochondrial dysfunction, and you already have thyroid symptoms of low thyroid, well, that excess chronic stress all accumulates, and that being too low of carbohydrate could cause your body to have more imbalances and be in stress mode. And then we talk about what the energy blueprint with H.I.D.E.N says is you can be in cell defense mode or energy mode. And so kind of put this all together. I'm just processing this as I supposed to be talking about what Dr. Stacy Sims says in her book, but then I was putting these notes with Dr. Stacy Sims notes of what Dr. Ali Miller is saying, because I was wondering, is Dr. Sims right? Is too much intermittent fasting not good for a female athlete? Is fasted workouts not a good thing? But what if we're fat adapted? What if we're burning fat? Well, is it increasing our cortisol? Are we breaking down our muscles? So I think we need to take all this into account when you're reading all the information out there and everyone's celebrations and wins of fat loss, that you need to look at, are they a female or are they male? Are they an athlete? Are they an endurance athlete? Are they having a stressful job? Are they a parent or single parent and they have a full-time job? I mean, being a parent is a lot of stress. I don't know how people do it, and I don't have kids, but I find just having my husband and I, all the stuff we have to do, and we work full-time, that it's stressful. I can't even imagine having to feed kids. And makes it easier just fasting and having my lunch dinner at 3:00 and be done with it. But if you have to make dinner for a family, it's a lot more work and all the stress that goes with it. So stress accumulates. So Dr. Ali Miller talks about carb cycling, and for women, it's interesting how ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier and reduce oxidative stress in the brain, and it supports the optimal neurotransmitter signaling that have a direct influence on the GABA neurotransmitter. That GABA reduces our fight or flight response, so it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and GABA also is grounding, so it's a great anti-anxiety effect on the body. So more GABA is great for people that have anxiety issues and need to mellow out and have trouble sleeping. I've taken GABA at night from Natural Stacks. But if you're stressed out, long-term keto can cause imbalances in the body. So Dr. Ali Miller talks about carb cycling and getting your body back in balance and working with your imbalances. So keto does improve your metabolism, your mood, but for some people, and these are the people we're talking about, Dr. Stacy Sims' book, athletes and females, depending on their menstrual cycle, can cause imbalances if you're not careful. If you're already a stressed out person with too many stressors in your life, have excess stress, that beaker of stress is filled, as I said, physiological, mental, emotional, environmental, all of that comes into one funnel. And it impacts your hormones and the regulatory functions of your body. In FDN, we call it metabolic chaos, this whole HPA axis dysfunction. The imbalance of your cortisol to your DHEA will cause breakdown and all these other domino effect of broken down health systems will occur. And Dr. Allie Miller's article about keto plus exercise plus fasting plus a sauna, all this stuff, these hormetic stressors we biohackers like to do, thinking more is better, it could be causing you to break down instead of build you up and make you more invincible, optimal health. So we want to become more resilient over time, but it's not this constant stress. If you add all this together, instead of doing one or two of the things each day, not doing everything. As I say every time, more is not better. Sometimes less is more, but that depends on you. So you need to tweak your own fasting window. You don't have to do more than a 16-hour, 8-hour feeding window each day. You could do a 12 and 12 hour. Mix it up. Don't just be so type A driven that you stick with this rigid schedule. You need to listen to your body, get those signals, that intuitive eating, that going to listening to your body when it needs a little fuel. Have some protein. I've been making extra grass-fed burgers, have those in the fridge. So if I go to eat something, I have that available. And, having some nuts and cheese, but it's easy for me to overeat that, so I need to quit doing that. And then I'm probably eating too much dairy, so that's not good either. So same thing with what you eat, it's having that variety of that 4-day rotation diet. So everything needs to be mixed up, not too much of anything, not too much of the same food, not too much fasting in a time-restricted feeding window might be too rigid for you. You're an athlete, you're exercising. None of these other research articles are really focusing on, and in fasting, focusing on people with chronic health issues. So of course they're going to get these huge benefits from keto, intermittent fasting. But what if you have excessive training schedule going on top of a crazy life? You have to take that into account. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting too low of calories? You're doing too much fasting, too low carbohydrate intake, too much of anything. You're overtaxing your body. So hormone imbalances can occur. You can become insulin resistant, as I did, from having too many stressors. So I was raising my blood sugar all the time. I had to, I mixed up my food. I'm eating more protein actually this past, almost a year since I had my new carnivore friends that influenced me to try more protein. I'm not Danny Vega eating organ meat, and that will never happen. I can guarantee you that. I'm not going to eat heart and liver, and all the sweetbreads are absolutely disgusting to me. So go for that if you can, but it's not going to happen with this body, this person, in this lifetime. But you need to get those nutrients in your body. Sex hormones are made from fat. So people want to know about cholesterol. It's a precursor to your other hormones, and it's made from, steroid hormones are made from fat. So we need fat, we need protein, and doing low carb does help a lot of people with PCOS, infertility, having higher fat, having more satiety, because that hormone leptin gives us that sensation of being full and satisfied. And we get less ghrelin, that growling, the appetite hormone improves as well. So there's pros and cons, but again, all these articles and information out there is N equals 1. It's not looking at the female menstrual cycle or looking at the female athlete. So if you have the chronic stress on top of being too low carb, on top of too much intermittent fasting, fasted workouts, you may try mixing up keto with carb cycling. So Dr. Ali Miller suggests having days 19 to 20 of your cycle have a little more carbohydrates on those days. So that's about 5 days before ovulation, or before your 5 days post ovulation, or like 8 days before your cycle starts. So it's what we talk about in the book review of Roar. The menstrual cycle for women is broken up into 2 phases. So you have your phase 1 cycle and phase 2 that we go into, and looking at how the ups and down flows of estrogen and progesterone is going to impact your cardio and endurance, your muscle building, your recovery, your repair, your hydration. So Erin and I will talk about the performance part, and Dina and I talked about the nutrition part, but the book Roar has great information in it. I think it's a good read and something to think about. I would track your cycle. I suggest using your training peaks and using a calendar wherever you track your food and your exercise, and start looking at what your cycle is for females, of course, but looking at when is your phase 1 luteal phase, progesterone, estrogen, how are those levels? You don't know, of course, if we can get that easy access to testing our hormones. But we have these phases. Day 1 to 14 are called the follicular phase, and days 15 to 28 are the luteal phase. And ovulation occurs right in the middle. Rising and falling hormone levels trigger all of it. So we've got the main hormones we talk about is progesterone and estrogen surge different times of the month, and that is going to impact your ability to burn fat and use carbohydrates and build muscle and have better endurance. So all these different things we need to look at for performance, and how, to train based on your menstrual cycle. So it's pretty cool information. You can get really specific on how you should be changing your training schedule based on your cycle. So your low hormone phase is the first 1 to 14 days, and your high hormone phase is your luteal phase, where your estrogen and progesterone concentrations are higher. So interesting, Dr. Sims explains how you're more like a man, so your training and fueling program and thermoregulation during your first part of your cycle and the follicular phase will be more similar to male training. But what we need to alter is the second half of our cycle, when our hormones are higher, different than a man. So your training program shouldn't look the same, and it shouldn't be the same as a male's training program. So interesting as well, she talks about how your blood plasma levels can drop up to 8% during high hormone luteal phase of your period, and that has a big impact on your hydration and cooling strategies. So she talks about preloading with hydration formula as a company she co-founded, Osmo, and then there's preload, I think that's through Osmo, and then she gave some other recipes how to make it yourself, which is always easier to buy, but simple to make. And she talks also about it's harder to hit high intensities and recover from hard exercise during the high hormone phase. So when you're feeling PMSing emotions, you might have a harder time doing HIIT training. So that's where we alter our training program to do more the longer, lower maffetone type of heart rate training that last 2 weeks of your cycle, and then do the harder, higher intensity intervals, speed workout, rest-based training during the first 2 weeks of your cycle. And then she talks about the side effects of high hormones with what you eat, so intervening more protein and hydration. So talk about having 5 to 7 grams of protein before you work out, 30 minutes before. So I've been using my H.I.D.E.N aminos because I like just taking a scoop of that and putting in my shaker water bottle, and that's 5 grams. And then I've been trying to do it post-workout, because you'll learn in the book it's that 30-minute window to add your amino acids after your workout. And then when you eat, have 40 grams of protein, which I've also heard you can only digest 20 to 30 grams at once. So more is not better, once again, because your body can't break that down. And I specifically need some digestive enzymes and HCl-betaine and some bile support when I eat my meal. So that's why I like using Capex, because that has all of those ingredients that help us digest the food properly, especially when you're adding a higher protein level into your program. So as we get older, the perimenopausal and menopausal, our hormones get lower. So remember what DHA hormone is more muscle building, so anabolic, and cortisol is catabolic. And they're supposed to be in balance, right? But if we have chronic stress that doesn't stop, we create imbalances in our cortisol to DHA ratio. And our circadian rhythm have this up and down flow of cortisol to melatonin also gets disrupted. So we really need to look at what I'm doing actually tomorrow, my Dutch test that is dried urine test that you can do. Starts 5 o'clock at night, then an evening bedtime measurement, and then a middle of the night test, then 2 in the morning, and it takes your metabolites and your hormone levels throughout that time with dried urine tests. So it's a great one to do on top of the other labs I suggest doing. Also doing my new GI panel test, which is lovely to put a scoop of your poop into a little vial. So I have to do it for 3 days, and I literally have to hold my breath and not vomit by scooping a sample of my poop into 2 little containers for 3 days. So it's hard for me to do, but I really want to know if I have any remnants of H. pylori, which will impact your health tremendously, as well as I had once blastohominus from swimming in contaminated water with my immune system down from chronic stress. So those kind of things you don't know about unless you do those labs. And sadly, you have to do a stool test to find out any bacteria infections, parasite infections, and all that fun stuff. So anyways, back to the book review. You can offset many of these unwanted side effects of the high hormones with the protein. So she talks a lot, as I said, about having more protein, but building muscle is what I was just talking about. Having more of that balance of the catabolic to anabolic is not doing so much that chronic cardio. And I know we're training for triathlons and 50K trail running and ultra runs and doing marathons, but we have to realize what we're doing to our body. It's not good for us. If you're exercising more than 45 minutes, it's not beneficial. You're creating more damage than good. So how to counterbalance that oxidative stress you're putting on your cells, mitochondria damage, that continuous stress we're loading on our body. We need to have more days of recovery and more strength training. And especially as women age, our hormones get lower, and you can't blame the aging process. You just need to go with flow and change with your hormones changing. So adding a lot more protein, having protein as a key on aminos. I like before a workout, after the workout, with my meal, and before bed. That's going to help me. I'm lifting more weights. I'm lifting weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning, and I do better with less repetitions and more sets. I'm doing more functional strength training to add more mobility. But you need to lift weights and not do only cardio, because it's not, if you're doing it to lose weight, especially, not beneficial. I was watching people this morning who are all on these cardio machines for the 45 minutes. I was doing strength workout with some heart rate movements, and I wore my heart rate monitor, and I was 120 to 140 heart rate most of my workout, besides lying on the bench. But all these people doing the cardio machines, I was getting way better workout than they were, and they looked bored, and they're all watching me in my show I gave them. But it was pretty funny. I knew them, most of them, but I just want to say, you guys are wasting your time doing the elliptical for 45 minutes at one heart rate. Boring. Unless you're training for a race, you don't need to sit on a machine, especially those aren't effective for being outside and running unless you're injured. But getting the strength part is important to balance out those hormones. eating more protein, and then Dina and I will dive into fasting, because I have been doing fasted workouts for a very long time. I've been doing, long runs on Sundays. I haven't done last couple months because I'm trying to work on some muscle imbalance, some injuries. But eating too low of carbohydrate, or that you're eating your muscles. All these people I know say you don't need carbohydrates, but it's catabolic if you have to convert protein into glucose. I don't want to break down my muscles. So having a little Vespa before a workout, and if you are doing a long workout, I'm not doing, more than 2 hours on a run right now, and I'm not doing more than 2.5 hours, 3 hours on a bike ride this time of year. But when I do, having a slow release fuel as you can works for me. Or if it's a shorter workout, maybe having some S fuel, having some Vespa before in the middle of my workout is something I will experiment with. But right now my workouts are too short to really need fueling. But Dr. Stacy Sims talks about, if you're doing too low of carbohydrate, can you elevate levels of cortisol? And higher levels of cortisol equals catabolic workout, right? So you're breaking down rather than building up. So if you're trying to do more HIIT training, as CrossFit, really long endurance, you're putting your body under more stress. So she talks about, Dr. Sims in her book talks about, as we get older, we have increased sensitivity to carbohydrates, and we have lower estrogen levels, right? So we need to improve our muscle building because that's more catabolic. But she says we need less carbs as we age because we have increased sensitivity or carb sensitivity, but quality carbs we have to watch for. But she doesn't think fasting is good for you or too low of carbohydrates. So even though as we age we're more sensitive to carbs, I'm curious what Dr. Sims says today, because that's a few years ago, but it's causing stress in your body if you go too low. So again, it's that Allie Miller is talking about, same as Stacy Sims, is that I take it as that, it's individualized, but how much is too little? How much is too much? What's that right amount? And that's why I like Keto Mojo to test the blood sugar to know if it's in the right range to keep my blood sugar steady. But you might want to test, your heart rate, watch that. Look at your heart rate variability to know if you recovered or if that was too much stress on your nervous system. Because remember, heart rate variability also shows the balance between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic system. So if you look at our LS and H, low frequency and high frequency, it's been years since we talked to Rhonda Collier, Sweet Beat, and you can go back in our archives. We did lots with them on heart rate variability, but measuring that will tell if you're creating more stress on your body from too much exercise, too low carbohydrates, too much fasting. But Dr. Stacy Sims talks about an active woman needs more protein. She talks about caffeine, talks about exercise, recovery, and repair, and talking about, how you can burn more fat. Dina talked about this, but the fed versus fasted study, how you can use more fuel if you're fed versus fasted. So I don't know, it's so confusing out there, and that's why, it's hard to interpret all this information and get science, because everybody's going to react differently. You have different genetics, and depends on your time of the month, menstrual cycle for a woman, and your age, and your genetics, and your microbiome, and all this stuff. So for me personally, as I'm 48, somehow I'm turning 49 in November, and I'm planning ahead for turning 50 somehow in 2021. I don't know how, but I still feel 35. But I know I am very carb sensitive, and my genetics show that. I need more protein. Do I need a little more carbs before a long run? I have Vespa I'm experimenting with. As I said in another episode, I am doing Keon aminos and mixing them with my athletic green, so I get some carbs in there and tons of nutrition. So that's my post-workout drink. When I eat, I'm having just mostly fat and protein. On the weekends, I automatically let my carb guard. I just thought of that, carb guard. I let my carb guard down, and then I have a little bit more carbs. I don't really worry about it. I stay away from gluten. I might have these gluten-free Mollygon crackers, and maybe sometimes I get the tortilla chips are made with, what's it call it? The root vegetable. But, I'm not as strict, especially I'm working out longer endurance on the weekends, and I swim and I bike on Saturdays and run usually Sundays. And, I think it's good to mix it up. For me, as I've said before, I dieted way too much growing up. And so if I restrict myself to feel like I'm dieting, that's not sustainable and it will mess with my head. But if I just eat more protein with fat, like I just had steak and I melted butter and cheese on it and some salt, and I just ate that for my main meal. And then I did have something earlier. I had a grass-fed burger that I had just cold in the fridge, and I ate that. And for me, that works. But I've done my metabolic typing. I'm just about to do my new food sensitivity lab test. I haven't done for a few years, but I'm redoing that because that changes every 6 months. I've done my DNA fit, and I don't do well with carbohydrates. But as an athlete and a female, I need to switch up my carb intake based on first part of my cycle versus the last part of my cycle. So you can really dial it in individually, looking for female athletes about how you feel and how your performance is, how's your recovery. So, are you causing more stress or not? Are you burning fat or are you gaining weight? I'm getting a lot of people coming to me for coaching because it's not working for them. There's a lot of red flags that they're getting, and they may not see it because they're looking at how everyone else is successful. But for them, it's a struggle to be low carb and doing excessive fasting and training a ton and being busy working full time and having a family. It just is individual. So we need to work with you, your metabolic chaos, your internal stressors. We can identify with the functional lab testing, looking at all this as an individual. So get your raw data from your genetic test, upload it to DNA Fit, go to metabolic typing diet, check out what they say about you, and they'll give you a food list. See how you feel after you're working out. Too low carb can elevate your stress hormones, but it depends on you. I think if it's additional stress, even if you're burning fat and you can do a fasted workout, like I can not eat anything for hours, but maybe if it will improve my performance, I need to respect that and experiment a little bit and get it out of my head that sometimes you do need a little carb, and that's why I can do Vespa or I can do UCAN and learn for yourself. But taking those Keon aminos I put in the show notes. I like K-Pex from BioOptimizers for my nutrition when I'm eating a meal to help break down all that protein and fat. Really important to take that. And then Megaspore Biotic. I think everyone needs an excellent probiotic that'll help heal your leaky gut in 30 days. I also have a supplement drink mix that's a prebiotic and a mucosal barrier mix that you do phase 2 and phase 3 if you need a leaky gut repair. And then what's my other favorites through Quicksilver Scientific, I take their B complex and their mitochondria support, and I take the glutathione. Everything costs a lot of money, but you guys can go drop 10 grand on a new bike and not even think twice. But to buy supplements that are $50 each, people freak out about. And coaching, I charge $7.97 a month. And that's for, weekly coaching call and online support every day and working on all this paperwork and lab testing. And it should be a lot more than that because all the time, the hours I spend on each client every week is way more than that. So I think people need to realize you have to take ownership of your health, work on not just being focused on tomorrow, on improving your race season this year, but look what's next year, what's around the corner. Look at your athletic performance and getting those peak performance gains, but don't damage yourself that you can't do this forever, do this sport, as I've been damaged since 2013 and it's now 2020. Don't speed up the aging process. So you're damaging your mitochondria function from all this excess stress. So we need to train the whole athlete, as the show's called. Train, fuel, and perform to balance your blood sugar, to improve recovery and repair, and get faster and stronger and leaner as you get older, and not blame the aging process. We want to work on longevity. Sometime I will start working on reading Ben Greenfield's new book that is gigantic. I think it's bigger than the textbooks I had in college, so I'm not quite sure how to start and not get distracted and jump around the book, but go chapter to chapter. But it is gigantic. So if you haven't gotten his book yet, you should. It has kind of everything in it, just as his other book is somewhere on my bookshelf here. But he puts all that information together just into one resource manual. So hopefully you listen to my upcoming episode with Dina to talk about hormone and the female athlete. And then I'll talk to Aaron Carson about how to alter your strength training schedule based on your hormone schedule. So lots of exciting stuff coming up and lots of information on mitochondria. So remember to listen to your body, listen to those red flags, and use something as I use with my clients, the diet check record. How do you feel after you eat, after your workout? Evaluate your performance, your energy level, your digestive system, and pay attention. Because if you ignore those red flags for many years and you're oblivious to them, you're going to wake up one day and be on your bike ride as I was and can't pedal and gain 30 pounds in like a day. So, the struggle's real and I'm out there to help you, but you need to start realizing you have some choices to make. And, it's not that hard. It's just admitting that what you're doing right now is not helping. So sometimes you need to look at you as an individual and not compare yourself and do the same program everyone else is doing out there. So listen to you. It's an individual process. All right, enough of my lecture today. Thanks for listening. Please share this podcast on social media. I love hearing from you and getting those shout outs. It makes my day as I start to just focus all my energy in how to share life is not a race, it is a journey, and getting on other podcasts and speaking this year at KetoCon, and I'm speaking on Jimmy Moore's low carb cruise in May, and whatever else I can do to get this message out there to other athletes. And I already booked my trip to Ironman Hawaii in October, so I'm excited. That was my Valentine's gift for my beautiful, amazing husband. Neil gave us our tickets for Ironman, so got all that taken care of. Of course, I will not be racing, but I'll be there trying to help people from living life as a race and not be able to race anymore. Okay, find me on social media, Low Carb Athlete on Instagram, Facebook, Low Carb Athlete, and the podcast page, and then my website has everything you need, debbiepotts.net, and grab those free ebooks that are sitting there. And there's lots of different ones for you to read up on. Okay, enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.